We're about to start the meeting. The applicant is a little bit late, so I'll do the intro, and if he's not here by that point, we'll go on to the second item, which is agenda item 6, I guess. Yes. So we'll start with the intro anyway. So welcome to this evening's Planning Committee meeting, Gloucester City Council's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Conda, the chair. The meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you're present in the chamber, you are also consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. I'll now go down the agenda in item order, starting with apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Barmier, Councillor Harries, and Councillor Barmier and Councillor Harries, and they have substitutes Councillor James and Councillor Hyman. So good evening to all of those.
Councillor Marshall.
Oh, Councillor Marshall. Oh, yes. Yep, it's down here. Sorry. So, does anybody have declarations of interest to declare for the items on this meeting? So, the applicant's arrived. That's good. So, no declarations of interest. So now we move on to agenda item 3, the minutes. Are members of the committee content for me to sign off the minutes of the last meeting as a true record? Everybody all right with that? Yes, thank you very much. We have no late material, so we move on to the next item. Item number 5. So this is an application for the resident at number 22 Borton Road. Can I ask the planning officer, senior planning officer, head of place, to introduce the report? Sorry, senior planning officer, principal planning officer.
Planning manager. We'll get there.
Planning development manager.
I've had all those roles. So
right, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So this application is at 22 Borton Road in Tuffley Ward. It's for the installation of an air source heat pump at the front of the property. The application is before you as per the Constitution, which requires, for the benefits of transparency, applications by serving members to be heard in this public forum. The site location plan, if I could have that slide, please. Thank you. Is up there on the screen, and I'll just point out on here that you can see that the property is an end of terrace property set away from the main Borton Road via a pedestrian route. We've received one letter of support for the application, which is from 20 Borton Road to the north on that corner there, on that corner return, and that was speaking positively about the environmental and sustainable benefits of the application. Have the next slide, please. This is the front of the property. You'll see it's a 2-storey home there, and the air source heat pump will be going on that front elevation. We know that the air source heat pump will be approximately 80 centimetres off that main front wall, and from the middle of the pump to the middle window of the adjoining property is 6 metres to the neighbouring window. Can I have the next slide, please? There's some images there of the site. So just to get yourself orientated, that image there on the left, we've got our back pretty much to the air source heat pump. And you'll see that the property to the north is slightly elevated there. There's a retaining wall and the tree. And then the image on the right shows the railings and the steps down to access the property. So it's set down from the road. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. This shows the position of the air source heat pump at the front of the property. It's just labelled there, ASHP. And in terms of the unit itself, we'll move on to that one. This is the technical spec for the unit. So the proposed unit would be a Daikin Altherma 3 high capacity monoblock and be installed as per the specification provided. The size is up there on the slide. I'll just read it out for you. It's 1.3 wide by 46 centimetres deep by 87 centimetres tall. So that's a total of 0.55 cubic metres. So that would be smaller than what you can do without the benefit of planning permission. The reason that this application is before us is that it's slightly louder than what you can do without requiring planning permission. So the spec on the unit comes out at 43.88 decibels, and you can install without planning permission something up to 42 decibels. So that's why it has come for the planning permission. Can I have the next slide, please? And that shows that calculation. And you'll see at the bottom there, it just says fail planning. That just means that it has to be an application rather than being permitted development. And that gives us all the specifications, which will be part of the condition. So it's right that it comes to us to assess, so we can check the impacts, make sure that the amenity of any neighbouring occupiers is safeguarded. Let's have a look at the final slide, please. Oh, there we are. We have looked at the impact in terms of the tree, and the tree officer's happy. We've looked at the amenity of the neighbours, particularly in terms of noise. We've had it assessed by our consultants. They are happy that there'll be no adverse impact on noise, and we've assessed the character and appearance of the street scene, and we're comfortable given that the location is off the main road. It's settled down slightly, reduced down into the landscape. That's not going to have a detrimental impact on the street scene. So in terms of the policy framework, that's all set out in section 6 of your report and speaks to the requirements of the planning system to support renewable and low carbon energy. The government is very positive about air source heat pumps and makes it as easy as possible, which is why you don't typically require planning permission if you can be under that sound output and under the sort of size thresholds. So in conclusion, taking into account all of the impacts of the proposal, which are deemed to be minimal and will not create an adverse impact, we consider this application to be policy compliant with the relevant policies of the Joint Core Strategy, the Gloucester City Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant subject to our standard conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's now an opportunity for members to ask questions. Councillor Wiedeholt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you've explained why we're here, because initially I was concerned that the exceeding the threshold of 42 decibels was a reason to come to planning committee, but as you've stated, that would just require planning permission, and therefore the council's officers would have dealt with that. So we're only here because Councillor Jones is the applicant. Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you. Councillor Castle.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, out of curiosity, why you went for the one that was higher noise than the standard 42 decibels.
Thank you. We can't understand why the applicants made that choice of unit. Sometimes these are the units that are provided by the energy supplier themselves, but this is the one that's before us to determine, so we'll have to focus on the one that is the 43.
Thank you.
And any other questions? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. On the description you're showing out, it showed, I think you said it's going to be 80 centimetres across the front. It's a 1.3 going backwards then towards the property.
Thanks, Kat. The measurements, the 80 is off the main wall, so it's slightly forward of the porch. They don't fix these to the house themselves, they're sort of set forward. In terms of the size, the 1,380 millimetres is the width of the unit, and the depth of the unit is the 46 centimetres, 460 millimetres. Does that make that clearer?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I was just trying to understand if it's going to be 1.3 on the facade or if it's going to be the 0.8. I think that's it really. I think I can't see any issues with it at all. Yeah, just.
Right, is it necessary we have this pump, like the size of it? Question. The pump here. Sorry, Selina.
Thank you, Chair. This is the application that's before us. So the size of the unit is the size of the unit. The necessity of it isn't really for us to question at this time. We just have to focus on the content of the application that's made before us.
So we just put on the application, not size and etc.
The size of the unit that's in the application is the size that's been included in the report, and I've updated you here. It's the same. Yeah.
And is it 24?
Would you like me to answer it?
Please.
The fan will come on and off depending on the temperature outside and inside the requirements of the household. So it's intermittent.
And you talked about wildlife, etc. That wouldn't interfere with the other wildlife as such, would it? Birds or anything, just flying there? Be protected.
Thank you, Chair. The unit itself is designed, it has a mesh frontage, a grille on the front there. Would you like me to put the image back up? Would you be able to put the specification up, please, Lauren? Thank you. So obviously they're designed to all the usual standards that you'd expect them to be. There's the mesh on the front there, and just to be clear, it's installed on the ground. Yes. It's freestanding on the ground. It's not elevated. It's actually fixed to the ground.
Councillor Wiederholt.
Thank you, Chair. I looked at the noise comments associated with this application, and there was one from January, 29th of January this year, which said, if the ASHP were to be located on the gable end of number 22, then I would have no objection to the application in terms of noise nuisance. Were any of the mitigations that were proposed adhered to, or is the original plan still the plan and therefore we're sitting at 44 decibels?
Thank you, Chair. There was some initial confusion through the noise assessment. We asked for it to be reassessed. The original calculation, the modelling was done taking the measurement not to the nearest habitable window. So it came out worse than it is actually in reality. So it was rerun with the full plans and the full details. And initially it didn't take account of the fact that there was the porch and then the window, and the top window was the bathroom. So it just required us to run the technical model again with the accurate information, and actually it came out as having no adverse impact. So that mitigation was no longer considered required.
Thank you. So does that mean that within the application it says 44 decibels, but actually redoing the calculation you come out at less than 42?
Thank you. Obviously noise is different the further away you are from the unit. As far as I'm aware, the planning permission is for the 43.88 decibel unit. That's the sound that will be emitted from the unit.
According to the legislation, so.
Any other questions? Councillor Allison.
Thank you. Would you be able to pull the plan up, to show the sighting of the unit. If that's okay. So the location of the units, you've got the porch there, it's just sat in front. Where's the nearest neighbour's window? Would that be classed as the porch door? If it's glazed?
Okay. It might be easier to see it from the site photo, but that the neighbour is a mirror image of that property. So you've then got the porch, a wall, and then the window. So it's 6 metres away to this from the centre of the air source heat pump to the centre of the neighbouring window.
So to clarify, would the porch being glazed be classed as a window as it lets light in?
Thank you, Chair. We go from to habitable room. So we go to a room that where people would be spending time and living. So we wouldn't measure it to the porch. We would measure it to the nearest habitable room, because people aren't typically in their porches for a period of time.
No problem. That answers sort of, I think, the point that Councillor Alwyn was going on about with regards to the noise. Although it's over the 4.2 allowance, 4.3.8, 43.8, 44 say, because it's got to be a metre from a neighbour's window, and if it's 6 metres away, then although it's noisier, then the allowance, the noise sort of drops. That's the point of this, yeah.
Yes, exactly that. So as you move away and the sound the vibrations have to travel through air, the noise reduces the further away you are from the unit. So the calculation has been complete by the manufacturer. It's been tested by our technical officer who has done a full noise assessment, and they're satisfied that there would be no noise nuisance from the unit.
Thank you. Just lead on to my last question with that regards to the noise. On page 23, it says sound noise, sound power level, 62, I think that's 60 decibels. How's the sound reduced to 42.8 when the Daikin unit's a very good unit, by the way, so probably one of the best units you can get compared to Mitsubishi and whatnot. But it says 62 decibel sound power level when it's on heating. I was just wondering how the calculation then reduced that to the 43.8.
Thank you, Chair. Lauren, could you pull up the table that has if you keep that one? Yeah, thank you. So all manufacturers are required to include the sound power level, and that's different to the final sum you get at the bottom of that process. So you pop the sound power level in at the top, and then you take off the distance to the habitable room and various other calculations, and then actually where the air pressure and the distance kind of enables you to make the calculation. So the final calculation of the actual noise would be the 43.88, and that's come from the manufacturer and then been assessed by our noise specialist.
I know, I just can't get my head around this, you know, I mean, it's been brought and then it's going on and on. What would, being on the floor and everything else, and sometimes think, what's the vibration would be like? Because, you know, sometimes when they were drilling outside in my road, the vibration was coming in the house. But what would this fan make 24 hours?
Thank you, Chair. They're usually installed on a pad with dampeners, and the vibration won't have any impact on the neighbouring properties. It's very minimal. I think that's why they're not attached to the wall potentially, but you know, it's separate from.
Yeah, but
It's not on 24 hours a day either.
no, I know all that. I just want to make sure, yeah.
I've got one.
You got one?
Yeah, about 20 years.
Oh, okay.
And that's an old one, so it works still.
Councillor James.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we had a similar, albeit slightly quieter unit installed last year, and they don't vibrate. they're on dampness. They are large units. They're not the prettiest of things, but it is an amazing heating system, which is so much more eco-friendly than anything. If you've ever stood outside somebody's house when the gas boiler's firing up, you can hear that much more than you can hear this unit. So I don't think the noise is going to be a problem, or vibration.
I think we're taking a leap into the almost unknown, and I commend Councillor James, Councillor Jones, Councillor Lewis for taking those first steps ahead of the rest of us, so we can actually find out from people's real experience what these pieces of equipment are like. It's all useful information for us. We're all going to have to adopt these in the future. So I think we've had questions. We've had a bit of debate. Is there any more debate to be had? We can move to a vote. Yes? All those in favour of this proposal? Oh, hang on. I have to give the applicant an opportunity to speak, I believe. Councillor Jones. I'm sorry.
I'm a bit under the weather today. I'd just like to thank everyone in the room, because I didn't see the vote then. I'd turn my head away, because I respect you guys. Wonderful questions. It's a shame that it's down to Octopus in the first instance sending out 2 specs and then taking weeks and weeks. Yes, I used to work in quality control. Yes, I should have gone through every item on that specification. I failed to do that. I now know in future, for everyone's sake, that you need to go through these things with a fine-tooth comb. And you guys have done that, and I respect all of the questions that you've raised. I'm going to go to my spiel now, and I might try and pick up on 1 or 2 of the things you've said. So a timer up? Yeah? Can I see it somewhere? Sorry.
I'll give you 50 seconds.
30 seconds. Right. I'd like to thank wholeheartedly the whole planning team as they've taken me through the rigours of the meticulous planning process to achieve the support by working collaboratively and collectively. Yes, in my backyard, I say to others, let's heat pumps let you keep up with the Joneses or the Patels, the modern double glazing game-changing moments when every town and city will have heat pump installation along with other renewables. If I and others see this tech, like Andy Lewis and Councillor Karen James, I and others see this tech, they will embrace it too. For example, in Australia, solar panel uptake increased by 20% due to the neighbourhood effect by keeping up with the Jasons and the Kylies. I'll just finish by saying peer-reviewed, scientific targets, open language can reduce CO2 via heat pumps. Thank you for listening and making an informed decision. Get a heat pump. It ain't a load of hot air. Keep up with the Joneses, the Patels, the Jasons and the Kylies.
Thank you very much. Right, now we can go to the vote. All those in favour of the application?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Unanimous. Excellent. Thank you very much. Right. So we can now move on to agenda item 6, which is a verbal update from the head of place. Yes.
He's on his way.
So agenda item 6, a verbal update from head of place. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. This is as you say, it's a verbal update for the purposes of completeness more than anything else. You will recall an email from me, hopefully to members in the room, clarifying a potential misunderstanding with respect to a report that came forward in January, which was geared around the 106 funding mechanism and how Homes England issue their funding to registered providers. The original intention of that report, which was delivered by the officer at the time, was to give members an overview of how Homes England distribute their funding, how that works in relation to 106 agreements, and some of the challenges that that poses when looking at additionality. And I think throughout the course of the report being issued, the misunderstanding directly that was taken that this is a new policy from Homes England, which then led to a resolution for the council to write to Homes England on behalf of members in the council to challenge this process, because it was felt that it was without consultation and it was a new policy that no one had heard of. And I would just like to ratify that that is not the case. As I set out in my email, the policy for Homes England and the way that they issue their funding and through their mechanism has not changed. It is a standard policy process. It is the same across all local authorities, and it is derived in the way in which they operate their strategic partnerships with their registered providers. For the purposes of clarity, what that means, and thank you to Councillor Stephanie Chambers, who came back on my email, and I saw subsequent emails from that. But in practice, what that means is that when we are looking at 106 agreements, obviously we have a policy provision, which is 20%. So when we're looking at regeneration schemes, we will ask for a policy compliance scheme of 20%. If there is a scheme that is going to be delivered at 100% affordable, then it can be negotiated within the 106 and legitimately can be placed to Homes England for Homes England to fund 100% affordability. The challenge comes when we have a scheme that doesn't meet the 100% and it sits in between the policy threshold and the 100%. So if you have a scheme that is trying to deliver 70% affordable homes and you try to put 70% within a 106 obligation, Homes England will not fund the 50% additionality. They will only fund the 20% policy. What this means for us, for local authorities and for members in the room, means that when we're trying to deliver regeneration schemes, it becomes difficult then for us to legally tie registered providers into delivering additionality beyond the policy compliant threshold if it's not at 100%. Now, the suggestion and the resolution that was passed was to write to Homes England, and I wanted to be clear today on the clarity and purpose of what we would be writing to them for, because if we write to them on the basis of challenging a new policy, they'll throw it out because it's not a new policy. That being said, I do agree with the comments and I do agree with the narrative that it is difficult and it provides the industry with a very challenging market, particularly when we're trying to deliver affordable housing. And so partly what I've been doing in the background is working with Homes England to try and strengthen the strategic level relationships we've got, so that if and when, hopefully, there is a review of policy, we have a stronger voice as a city council. I've also been working collaboratively with counterparts across Cheltenham, Tewkesbury and other districts to understand how they are approaching those conversations as well as we are. The second part to that is that for us to be able to deliver regeneration schemes and for us to be able to deliver additionality, we have to be able to build trusted partnerships with registered providers and trust that they will deliver on their promise of delivering affordable homes if it's not within a 106 legal agreement. And that is something that the City Council and the team and the across the place function and the housing department are looking at and working in consultation with One Legal, and we're looking at how we strengthen the agreements and look at different ways of assuring additionality. But for the avoidance of doubt, if it does not meet the 100% threshold, Homes England will not fund additionality. They will not fund below 100% if it is tied into a 106 legal obligation. I'm going to stop there because I appreciate that was a lot, but I hope that clarifies the position on the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
The trust word kept coming
Councillor
in.
Tracy, please. Question time, Councillor Tracy.
Yeah, it was just like the trust kept coming in many times. So how, you know, and I know you explained it, but I can't see, you know, what's the alternate? We've got just to go along with them, is that right?
There is a view that skeptically in the market, if you are partnering with the wrong registered provider, that yes, there's not much you can do legally. That being said, that's why it's so important that we maintain those strategic partnerships with the right registered providers, and we have proof points to see where they've delivered for Gloucester City, and we use and leverage those relationships. There is also, practically, there is also leverage within their own organisations to make sure they deliver, because without going into too much detail, the viability that they will be provided by seeking that funding enables a more viable regeneration scheme. So it is in their benefit to deliver on what they've set out to deliver. But to your point, Councillor, there is no way of legally tying them into that. And so, yes, you have to build a trust network with them, and you have to partner with the right registered provider.
Is that a bit of, I know I shouldn't say blackmail as such, but it's a lot of towing and throwing, isn't it, for you guys who's trying to put all this together? So what it would be an easier route for the council? Could they not come here and explain it all properly, or could we not hold them to ransom as such? That doesn't come into it.
Yeah, it is an ongoing challenge. It is an ongoing challenge, and it is a real challenge for the team in general. But until there is a review of national policy, I don't think it's going to necessarily. I think what our strength is in our character, and it's how we start to continue to build the relationship with Homes England, so that we have a voice at the point at which that comes round. But until then, you know, the team, particularly within the planning team and within the housing team, yes, they have to work very hard to deliver on behalf.
Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I've put some of my questions to you, and I suppose they are still the same, because I'm still confused about some things. Well, not confused, but I just don't understand why. Firstly, why their policy is policy compliant or 100%, because there's been various projects throughout the time that I've been involved with that it does cause an issue, and things are delayed significantly, and you've got to and froing. And I know we can trust people, and I've sat with people and wholeheartedly trust what they're saying, but that doesn't mean, particularly in the way things are moving in the world at the moment, that their strategic direction doesn't change, their board doesn't change. So we may have this trust with a person, because that's who you've got the trust with, isn't it, the person? But something could change, and we could end up with delivering things that are not delivering what they've promised it will deliver. And I don't know how we get around that, and I don't know what the issue is, why we don't want to write to Homes England, because I've always understood it's not a new policy, it's just, it is a policy that impacts us. So surely we should write to them just to say, this is how it's impacting us. I know it's impacting other people all around the country. And if enough people write to them, won't that help enact change?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think on the first point, which is around the mechanisms that give you something beyond trust with a registered provider, we're looking at different options. Now, you can go down the route of memorandum of understandings, you can have side agreements, but they're not legally binding, as you know. So we're working on that now, and we're trying to figure out ways of doing this. And that includes collaborating across other districts to see how they do it. But we're not out of kilter with how the rest of the industry is working. It unfortunately is common practice. And in response to the second piece, I'm very happy to write a letter to Homes England. The purpose of today was to clarify why we'll be writing that letter, in terms of making sure we're coming at it from the right source of truth. Perfectly happy to still write a letter. I would prefer to have the time to work with the other district councils to see how we might lobby something that has greater voice than just coming from Gloucester City. So that's partly what we've been looking at in the background, is whether or not there's something to do there. And the starting point for that has been meeting with senior people within Homes England to see whether or not this has happened elsewhere. So I totally take the point, But I think having a united approach sort of would strengthen that basis. But happy to take with you.
Okay, we'll come back, Chair. Thank you. I don't know where the work with the SLP is at the moment, but if we've got maybe some sort of policy or consultations going out with that, it might be something we could do in consultation with them. Claire probably knows more. But the other thing I just thought is where it says officers will deal with issues such as, I did note it down, to sort of nomination rights, affordability requirements. Isn't that something committee should also be discussing, goes into these other documents, whether that's a section 106, if it's something that's come to committee? Because it was quite important to this committee when we dealt with Snow Capel. Now, we did go against an officer's recommendation, but it was about the archaeological land. But it was the fact that that extra affordable homes were being delivered that, you know, everybody commented on that. That was why committee went the way they did. So I think it's important, you know, there's such things like nomination rights, the tenure mix is really important to committee, and they're the things we discuss all the time. So shouldn't we be discussing them rather than it just being pure officer decisions? Because that's just what I read in the report. I don't know if I've read that wrong or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of it coming to committee, it can be in the heads of terms. So yeah, it can be discussed here. I think in terms of the Snow Capel decision, again, I won't go into the detail on that. We're working on what this means for that scheme, because as you know, that provision was tied into a 106, which is why things are being quite tricky at the minute. So we're working to see whether or not we can find a solution to that, that either means it's still legally obligated and therefore doesn't need to come back to planning committee, or it will come back to planning committee. But at the minute, we're working through that with One Legal. So at this point in time, but in terms of actually committee deciding on nomination rights, etc., then yes, you still have visibility across them.
And so there's some things like St Oswald's where we own certain land, so we could look at doing things like that. But then some of those things interfere with Homes England anyway. But say other things, I won't mention which ones, but we maybe own a strip of land or something like that. Can we tie that into legal so we can't, you know, if they don't deliver the affordable homes, we don't transfer that land?
Yeah, I think, unless I'm wrong, you're referring to ransom strips, which, yeah, is potentially an option, and it is used. Obviously, as you say, it does come with restricted covenants. It does come with restrictions. It also comes with other complications that need to be ratified in the property side of how you then set up transfer agreements on land. It's not to say it can't be done, but it is a potential solution, and it is something we're looking at more broadly to see if that's how we can use that where it's appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis next.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Steph was saying there, and we need to discuss things and all of that. But going back to the collaboration with the other districts and this, that, and that, so would it be better, instead of writing one letter from us, one letter from all the districts to get together to show it's a Gloucestershire problem, or however far you want to go, just to let Homes England, it's not just us in isolation? If that's possible, I would say delay writing the letter, but get the fullest facts and everything. I don't know how long it'll take, 6 months or whatever, and then say to them, this is coming, here you go, you know, and this is how we're feeling, a bit, not aggrieved, I think it's just, but unconsulted. So we go from that. I would like to put that forward as a suggestion.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a credible suggestion. I think from an officer perspective, certainly in what I'm doing across the collaborative piece, I think we need a little bit of time to see what the appetite is from the other districts, and we do need to get our information and our ducks in a row. But I think it's potentially a credible solution, and we just need to make sure that we come at it from a position of strength. And we understand where it's going to go. I think the challenge at the minute, there's been a lot of shuffling at senior level in Homes England. We're not actually too sure right now where something like that would go. So we need to get our ducks in a row, but as a principle, I don't have a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say thank you for Andrew for all his hard work. couple of questions. Would there not be a workaround if basically there was a code of practice where it's overseen by an independent body, if there is an independent body that oversees the construction industry, to deliver between 21 and 99 homes, which seems to be the major issue here? And what evidence is there of builders doing what they say in terms of the 21 to 99? If they've said, for example, in their annual reports, you know, for a development near me in Grange, for example, Lime Grove, there'll be information in there saying about how many affordable homes are going to be built if it's, you know, between 21 and 99. So then we can hold them to account for that, and rather than, you know, avoid the necessity to go through all these lengths. I'm just looking at it from a left field kind of viewpoint, if that's possible. Thank you.
I mean, it's certainly something I'm happy to take away and have a look at. In terms of the sort of jurisdiction around independent bodies with Homes England, I wouldn't know. That's not my area of expertise, and it's probably something that would need to be looked at. But I'm very happy to take it away and just do some digging into it and see what the options are.
Are there any more questions? Councillor Alistair Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is what you're explaining earlier, I'm just double checking. Concerns around sort of legal substitution. The report recommends replacing the supplementary section 106 agreements with other legal mechanisms, that clearly specifying what those mechanisms are and the legal status. Concerns around that is potentially problematic under the section 70 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, which allows planning decisions to consider material considerations if an alternative agreement is not legally binding in the same way as a 106. It may not qualify as material consideration or may be unenforceable. So therefore, what my recommendation is to clarify what these alternative mechanisms are being considered.
Yeah, that's absolutely, to my point earlier on, the team are currently working through those mechanisms. They need to identify which ones have the same legitimacy of legal binding and which ones are more just side agreements with no legal standing or basis. And that's a piece of work that's happening now between our teams and One Legal. So when we have clarity on that, then absolutely, very happy to bring it.
Is there a time frame for getting those, what those mechanisms are and how they're worked with? Also, SIL Regulation 122.
In terms of time frame, we are trying to work through it as quick as we can, largely because we don't want to be in a position where anything's being held up longer than it should. So I can't give you a fixed date right now, but certainly I would expect over the next couple of months, if not sooner, we'll have an idea of what those mechanisms look like. And sorry, I don't know what you said on the SIL piece.
Well, thank you. Is there a deadline as such? Is the one just come back to the timescales? So with regards to SIL is that if alternative mechanisms are not aligned with these three tests being necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind, if these mechanisms are not aligned with these three tests, any obligations secured through them may be considered unlawful. So the recommendation would be to each alternative mechanism must be tested against these three SIL criteria. Is that going to be part of the same process we're doing with One Legal? And if so, again, with the timescale, is there a deadline?
In short, yes. It will all be measured in the same way, and it will all be looked at in terms of the parameters of what's legally binding, particularly within the Constitution for SIL, etc. And in terms of deadline, there isn't a deadline, but there is a motivation for the officers to try and figure this out because, as I say, we don't want to be in a position where we have regeneration schemes that are there that are not being fully, followed through. So no deadline, but a certain ambition to get this one done.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from other people? Councillor Stephanie?
With the Homes England funding, are we while we're looking into the different mechanisms, are we speaking to them at the same time? Because obviously there are some things that we've tried before and then they've said, no, that won't work. And they wouldn't accept sort of restrictive covenants and things. And are they working across the board? Does their funding work blanket, or do they have different agreements with different providers? Or, because it just seems a little bit inconsistent across some of the schemes that I've heard.
In answer to part one of that, in fact, I'll do part two. Part two is that the way in which their funding mechanism works is standard. That doesn't change, to my knowledge, unless but I've never worked for Homes England, but that's standard practice for how they work. They do have their own partnerships, strategic partnerships with registered providers. We haven't got sight of what they look like, but in terms of the actual funding mechanism delivery, which is what I've set out today, that doesn't change to my knowledge, but I can certainly check that. To remind me, sorry, what was the first part of it?
Just if we're
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. I've actually been in contact with them today, for a variety of reasons, but again, it's trying to find the right person to speak to. Some of the officers that we've been putting through to at the minute are not at the right level in terms of seniority to have the kind of footprint that we want to have those discussions. So we're navigating our way through, and we are bouncing ideas off them as we go. But obviously, we're a local authority, not a registered provider, so we get a slightly different relationship response.
Homes England obviously do the delivery, but are we writing to any ministers just to let them know what's happening to us, so maybe they oversee it and help enact some policy change?
Not to my knowledge, not at the minute. But going back to the previous conversation, once we have an idea of how we might want to approach this collectively, I think we then need to explore the best options of having the biggest weight in terms of voice, and that might be one way forward. But I need to see what the appetite is across the other districts first.
And do we know how many more applications are being held up at the moment?
Just the one, I think, at the minute.
Thank you. Final call for questions. Any debates that we haven't already covered? Councillor Tracy.
Thanks for, explaining all that and questions what was brought. And what would be the worst scenario if we didn't get, which you've already explained, but all the hard work has been put into it, affect Gloucester City? Oh, I thought.
I mean, you'd only ever be able to secure the 20% policy as effectively as the worst case scenario, which is still policy compliant, but it's not what the team will push for, because the team will always push for. The council team is in the home team will only ever push for additionality to try and increase the level of affordability and affordable housing across Gloucester City. So you will only deliver policy if it was worst case, which is why it's an incentive for us to work really hard as we do with the relationships with the RPs.
Thank you. I think we're all finished, but no, Councillor Lewis?
Just my suggestion about delaying everything till we've got the ducks in a row and other districts as well involved, if they want to, of course. If they don't want to, it's up to them. If that goes ahead, so we just hold off writing the letter until, but maybe contact the minister or something if we need to, or whatever. See if the districts would be more compliable with that. So.
Thank you very much. We're finally finished. Lots more research and discussions to happen. So we have to decide whether we're going to note the verbal update as provided this evening. Is that everybody voting for? Yes, universal. Thank you very much.
Can I just clarify this? which will be recorded, is that it's been delegated that we will assess the position for the other neighbouring authorities with a view to writing one joint letter, and that may take some time. That's my understanding of what members have agreed tonight, and obviously then I'd leave it for my colleague to address that, but that's where we're at this point in time. It's the difficulty is it's outside of our control because it's cooperating with the other authorities. So 6 months is probably a realistic time frame. Obviously, if there's a development beforehand, the officer can bring it back beforehand. But there's no point in asking if it to come in 2 months when we're still negotiating with the other authorities. It's outside our control.
Who's got thinking is, if we delay the letter, is it going to make any difference? You know, it's not going to make any difference to us getting the money or not getting the money or 100% or whatever. It's not going to make a difference.
It's going to make a start.
It's going to make a start, but I think it'll make a start if we have more people on that letter, the more impact it will have. So if you do it in isolation, I think they're going to go away. If you do it with 6 districts, a whole county, it might make a difference.
Councillor Alistair Chambers.
Is there a risk of it jeopardising the current application that's waiting as a result, or timescales lapsing, or funding being withdrawn, or Homes England money being retracted, or anything like that?
In terms of this letter, no. The letter is not going to impact the one that's being held up. The letter to go to Homes England would be the start of a process of talking to Homes England about their current national policy. That's not going to be something that is, derivative of a completion within this year, for instance. But that, as I say, that communication has started already, not in formal letter, but has started with the representatives in Homes England. In terms of the one that's being held up, the best thing we can do right now is to work, as I've already said, with our legal colleagues to look at these mechanisms to see which is the best and most swift way of getting this one across the line.
Thank you very much. So I think we've finished with discussion. Oh, Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
Sorry, Chair. One more thing about that is it's been on my mind for a while actually. That if something, I don't know whether this application that's being held up is something that's been to planning committee or it's been by delegated or whatever. I'm not sure. But when something has been decided and things been incorporated in Section 106 or some sort of mechanism, and then that's changed, they don't always come back, do they? And I think it's really important that they do come back to planning committee if the Section 106 or the mechanism is being changed in any way, because of the way that planning committee have decided that they've looked at all the elements of it, and if something's being taken out, it might change their mind on whether that scheme should go ahead or not.
I don't know to.
Oh.
Just to, through you, Chair, the power to enter into the 106 is, unless delegated to an officer, rests with the committee. If there's anything outside that scope, it will be brought back to the committee, because that's where the power comes from, for committee to make a decision, as you said, of whether that proposed change is acceptable or not. So that is something that we would do as a course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the further clarification on that. So we need to vote now that we note the verbal update, and also that the officer will come back in 6 months, if not sooner. 6 months or as appropriate, I think. So we take a vote now to note the verbal update. Everybody voted unanimous? Yes? Thank you very much. We now go on to agenda item 7, delegated decisions. Are members content to note the delegated decisions? Can we vote on the delegated decisions, please? Yes, everybody agreeing to all of those? Yes, thank you very much. So now the date of the next meeting will be Tuesday, the 3rd of June, 2025, 6 p.m. And the meeting comes to an end now. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Good evening.